What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Deep Dive Live version where anything can happen, Ian. Anything. Ian might just go into a profanity-laced tirade. You should see him when he's off shows. You think he's a gentleman and a scholar, but this guy, the minute the camera goes off, it's just boom, boom, boom. And I might hit the buttons proper to get this to happen today. And there's nothing our producer can do about it.
My algorithm on X is giving me all these bad Cormac McCarthy takes, and I'm about ready to explode.
All right. Well, that's something that I think our audience really wants to hear on the live.
That's exactly what they're here for.
But what they are here for is to talk about some Texas football. Even though we got Texas basketball in the tournament playing BYU tonight, we hope the Horns pull it off. We're going to talk about football. We're going to talk about both sides of the ball. And another place you can talk about both sides of the ball is Inside Texas. You got to go join 50% off spring sale, ultimate fan bundle. Oh my God, what a deal. Ian, I might just sign up. Or not.
Totally. Are you going to, you think?
Maybe. I think I have privileges that I get access to most of that stuff, but I might just sign up anyway. I'm a peer pressure guy. If I know other people are doing that, I have to do it myself. We already got some folks in the chat. We would love to hear from you as we're doing the show. Someone is already asking how long Ian has gone without shaving. Ian has advanced hair growth, so it could be a day.
I actually don't know. It's like a week or less.
Yeah, Ian puts Propecia on his chin, so who knows? Welcome to Cedar Park. Ian, your old stomping grounds.
That's right. Forever Cedar Park High.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about some opponents and some of the things they like to do, some of their predilections schematically. And we want to talk specifically about the new proliferation of the veer and shoot in the SEC, what that's going to mean for our defense. And then we're going to talk about the other side of the ball. Texas is going to play a number of games with some blitz-happy, pressure-happy defenses. And Ian, I'm not sure if you know this, but we didn't handle it really well last year, week to week, particularly on the road. And we're going to talk about why that was and what we could do to address that for us to reach our full season potential in 2026. You ready to go?
I'm ready. Do you happen to have, we'll get to it, but do you happen to have splits on Texas versus pressure versus at home versus on the road?
No. But I can,
That's right.
we can eyeball it. Was our offense awesome at Florida and at Kentucky? Okay. Do we need splits?
No. I was curious if you happen to have the numbers.
No, I don't.
It's apparent. It's an apparent difference, though.
It is an apparent deficit, but it's something I think we might have addressed. So what do you want to start off with? I'm going to let the shooter shoot. Do you want to talk about the reintroduction of the veer and proliferation of the veer in this SEC, or do you want to talk about these blitz-happy defenses?
Let's talk veer and shoot first.
Let's do it. So, Ian, I know you don't know anything about this offense.
Right. I'm here to learn.
I don't think most people know this, but Ian coined the term veer and shoot. So when you see that out there, that's our own Ian Boyd. He's the guy who literally wrote the book on it. And you should go buy it. It's on Amazon, called Flyover Football. It's a very good read. And it explains this proliferation of the air raid, the veer and shoot, and all of its little offshoot branches, and why it happened, where it happened, of course, in the Big 12. But it originally started Texas high school football. So let's talk about the veer and shoot, and let's talk about the teams that are going to run it. And let me set you up. Mississippi State and Tennessee were already running it. For a while, Heupel was the lone wolf veer and shoot practitioner. 2 years ago, we added Jeff Lebby, who was married to Art Briles' daughter. He's a veer and shoot guy all the way at Mississippi State. And then we've added 2 more teams to the fold. So now 25% of the SEC is running a pretty pure form of the veer and shoot. And then you and I can argue about what other teams, to what degree, also run the veer and shoot. LSU is going to run a little bit of that. Ole Miss is going to have a little hint to the veer and shoot. I think they're more air raidy than veer and shoot, but we can have that discussion. But South Carolina and Auburn have been added to the fold there. What do you want to talk about, and why are we having this move? I wrote an article at Inside Texas about why I think this is happening, and I think it's related to the portal. I think it's related to new personnel and the speed of uptake of this offense and the simplicity of defining what personnel you need, and that many of these personnel can be acquired on the cheap. So veer and shoot, Ian, go.
Yeah, I was very jealous. I had written some of those things before, but your whole portal thing and the like, hey, we can plug in guys really simply as cogs and have consistently good offense year over year running the system and using the portal. I don't have any articles to date quite putting that together as well as you did. So you have supplanted me in veer and shoot scholarship with that.
I have not supplanted you. In fact, you have been the trailblazer. I have merely followed on your way and stood on the shoulders of giants. In this case, not a giant, more of like a 5'9" guy, but you get the point metaphorically.
Yeah. You actually gave me an inch too, I think.
Oh.
The veer and shoot, let's just, for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, the veer and shoot is the name I gave to the Art Briles style of offense. And the things that set it apart are the basically it's having the receivers split really wide from the formation. So that you'll have like a slot receiver lined up at the hash marks or almost to the numbers. And your outside receiver is like almost hugging the sideline.
To give you guys an example, an outside receiver typically is outside, but they've still got a two-way go.
Mm-hmm.
Veer and shoot, classic veer and shoot. Those outside receivers, their cleat is almost touching the sideline, the white, right?
Yeah.
And you'd think, oh, great, I can constrain them. You know, they only have a one-way go. Well, now suddenly your corners are not a part of an entire part of your defense. And the veer and shoot attacks that.
More importantly, your safeties and maybe even your linebackers.
Yes.
The Art Briles conceit was basically, if I spread my guys far enough and I build the entire offense on spacing and tempo and run past conflict, then you're going to be unable to utilize. I'm going to divide and conquer your defense.
Yes.
It's just spread logic pushed to its logical extreme. And defenses have had a terrible time with it. They still have a terrible time even now, even as they have updated for the spread. There are still me, Pat, and Connor have been describing Muschamp's quarters defense and match coverages and all these rules that are supposed to allow the defense to always out leverage and outnumber the offense, no matter what they do. It's like, if they do this, then I do this, and that way we'll make sure our defense always can get numbers to the run or get numbers to the pass or whatever. The veer and shoot sacrifices multiplicity by restricting the space the receivers have with the sideline, but then they break all those rules and they thwart defensive systems that are designed to allow them to outnumber the offense. For a long time, that was pretty much the extent of the veer and shoot. They would run into trouble and they'd play a team like Georgia that would say, okay, well, we're not going to try to do both. We're going to just man you up in man coverage. We know you have a limited route tree now. And then we're going to load the box so you can't just run on a light box either. And that would start to work. And then Levy and Lane Kiffin and a lot of the veer and shoot teams now have started playing with different types of spacing where they'll still do the ultra wide splits, but then sometimes they'll have a guy like condensed all the way. They'll have like a tiny slot receiver lining up just outside the offensive tackle.
Yep.
And they'll do all sorts of they'll use bunch formations and condensed sets to create the exact same spacing problems, just moving the other direction. And I think that you overlooked this, Paul. I think that innovation within the veer and shoot school is also partly why it is starting to proliferate more, because it keeps evolving and it has some fresh answers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was trying to make my point by sticking to sort of the purity of the veer and shoot and not teams that incorporate its aspects, right? Because I just wanted to show like, hey, there's 4 teams in this league now that are pot committed to the veer and shoot. This is what they do. And then you got 2 or 3 other teams that dabble. including a little Texas, little hint, little Longhorns have
Yeah.
a little
They do,
veer
a
and
little
shoot.
bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Not, I wouldn't oversell that, but
No.
and I want to explain to you why that's happening. Let's go through the personnel requirements very quickly. I'll throw it out, and then you tell me if you agree.
Yeah.
O-line. You do not require dominant or even passable O-line for it to function. You get really big guys. You tell them to hold their ground. You get the ball out fast. When the defense has a light box count, you basically screen off guys and run the ball usually inside. The O-line need to only learn 3 or 4 run plays, and they might have 2 pass protections. And the goal always is all pressure must come late and outside. You never allow pressure up the middle in the veer and shoot, because 99% of the time, well, 90% of the time, your quarterback is setting up in rhythm, in time, in the pocket. Not a lot of rolling pockets in the veer and shoot, unless you have one little development that we're going to talk about that these SEC teams also have. That's another evolution of the veer and shoot, the dual threat quarterback. We're going to cover that in a second. But basically, you don't have to have great O-line play. And that is hugely helpful. And you also don't have to have necessarily genius O-line. You can bring in mental midgets. And now you're opening up the ranks of JUCOs. You're opening up all sorts of recruiting guys that 6'7", 330-pound dude who literally can't keep a play in his head. The veer and shoot's so simplified for the O-line that he can function in that offense. So do you agree with that or not?
I think this is a outstanding point that you made, especially with relationship to like being able to recruit big, potentially better athletes on the offensive line. Although that was your point, was you don't necessarily need the athletes, but being able to recruit large people and just have expanding the base of guys that can function on the offensive line in your scheme, that alone is worth, its weight in gold.
And let's talk about the receivers. So you would think, man, for this offense, you better have all world receivers. Yes and no. You need some overwhelming physical traits.
Yeah.
It's helpful to have really fast receivers. And often it's also helpful if that really fast receiver is 6'3". Or if he's not 6'3", he's 6 feet and like 220, and you can't really press him, or he might run through you. They can incorporate the Brendan Thompson, 160-pound, just ridiculous speed guy. And the thing that's interesting is you would think, well, those guys are 5-star recruits. No. In fact, the high-level recruits at receiver are skilled and physically impressive. We're just saying the veer and shoot needs physically impressive. You just need to run fast. And there's a lot of those guys. Think about Texas. Think about the Longhorns. How many guys have we had during the Tom Herman era, actually, or even before him, who could run? I'm like, really impressive physically, but not skilled or nuanced in any way. In a veer and shoot setting, those guys are really valuable. And guess what level of football has a ton of those guys? The group of 6. So you can actually recruit guys who have proven their physical abilities at that level. They level up just fine. Or you can go get backups at the Blue Bloods, and you're not paying those guys $1 million to play for you. You're paying them $75,000 and promising them 75 catches.
And then they can turn that around into a better offer, or make you retain them.
Or it's a 1-year rental, right?
Or 1-year rental. Yep. It does help to have in the SEC, because teams will take you up on your bet and play man coverage and be like, you can be super fast. That's fine. That's not going to be enough. Our corners actually know what they're doing, and they won't let you run past them. So it does help to have maybe at least one guy with some real skill. But man, even without that, Tennessee used to just do like stacks. They would just stack their receivers outside to get a free release for the one they wanted to throw deep to. And teams couldn't figure it out for a surprisingly long period of time. This has been not the best. Some of the SEC defensive coaching was exposed when Tennessee started running this, of just like, you guys, it's not that complicated.
Well, more broadly, do you remember the Big 12 doesn't play defense? The SEC plays defense. Yes. And then the spread and the veer and shoot come into the SEC, and suddenly we're playing games in the 40s. By the way, the Big 12 didn't really play a lot of defense. That's true. but it turns out that some of that was because of the offenses they were facing.
Yeah.
Let's keep going on those requirements. Running backs. Veer and shoot. Do you need a 5-star, 6'1", 220-pound chiseled running back that costs $2 million in the portal? How about a 5'8", 205-pound squatty guy who has a good first step, doesn't have any top end speed, weird body, and you put him in that offense running between the A gap, and he rushes for 1,400 yards just off alignment?
Yep.
Are there any of those guys around college football?
Yeah, right. It's like every other dude in the Sun Belt.
Well, and here's the thing. Tennessee's current starting running back, who ran for 1,000 yards last year at like 5.8 a carry, former walk-on, Deshaun Bishop. He was free, and now they pay him, but they're not paying him a premium. So let's keep going. Quarterback. Well, can you count the box? Can you process the same reads over and over quickly? And can you throw a catchable deep ball? We're done. Those are the base requirements. Now, if you can add skills and layers to that, even better, because the cool thing about the veer and shoot is it can scale, right?
Yeah.
But Art Briles made his living pre-RG3 off of a bunch of low 3-star quarterbacks who threw a good catchable deep ball.
Yeah. I mean, we saw also now what was the name of the guy that that Mississippi State had last year? Blake Shapen.
Yeah.
Blake Shapen is a good example of that.
Yeah.
He ran a little bit, threw a nice catchable deep ball, and then they would just use the spacing to give Pete Quickelli wide open spaces that he schemed open. But then we've also seen, as you said, like when it's RG3 and it's like an elite athlete who can throw on the move, that was really rough.
So let's talk about that after we cover one last position, cost of acquisition. Tight end. Classic veer and shoot tight end is a large blocking surface. Basically a 2-star. The guy's free or 50 grand. Now there is an alternate where you can incorporate the little nifty pass catching tight end to the veer and shoot just fine.
Yeah,
but the baseline requirement is large blocking surface.
Levy and Kiffin have really evolved veer and shoot, where they'll use the dual threat quarterback and then use option reads to account for defenders in the box, and then it frees up their tight end to be more of a like Daquan Wright last year, the guy that you don't really want blocking in a big moment, but is just one more weapon that's just suddenly in wide open space, and you're like, how do we stop this from happening? This is terrible.
Well, so I've sort of presaged the types of quarterback that are now in the veer and shoot, and I think this is another evolution of that offense, because a lot of that offense is built around a box count, and it's basically going where they ain't. Light box count, we're running the ball. They try to play us honestly or try to load the box. We're going over the top. Guess what happens to your box count when the quarterback is also a ball carrier? You get the +1. 3 of the 4 teams running the veer and shoot in the SEC are all capable dual threat guys. And they're all between 6'3" and 6'4" and 230 and 240. So you're not just going to injure them, like, oh, run your quarterback. We'll get him out. We'll put him out of the game. No, you're not. You're not going to put him out of the game. He might put one of your safeties out of the game. So that's another element. So we're talking about South Carolina's Lenoris Sellers. We're talking about Byron Brown, the transfer at Auburn from USF. And we're talking about, finally, Kamario Taylor at Mississippi State, who could be a dude. Keep an eye on that guy. The only exception is Tennessee. They're going to be starting probably McIntyre, but guess what? Their 5-star true freshman quarterback, 6'3", 210, runs a 4.4. Coincidence?
No.
And Heupel is the most, hey, I want my quarterback to throw of the veer and shoot practitioners. And he's already seeing that I probably need to have a dual threat.
Yeah, it just gets so easy to scheme the run game. It basically just turns into if you have like a dominant running back or a dominant running quarterback, then the veer and shoot can start to become a like James Harden, y'all clear out to the corners, and I'm just going to cook in the middle in all the space that's created. And if they play off of you, I'll throw it to you. You shoot a three. But most of the time, we're going to assume they're going to cover you because they kind of have to. Like the veer and shoot will just throw the quick screen if you don't respect them on the perimeter. And then if you load up on the perimeter, then they throw it deep over your head to the best matchup.
Yeah, and I think the veer and shoot is going to be a challenge for a lot of the SEC. Here's why it may not be such a challenge for us, or as much of a challenge. I think it still will be. But Texas, if you look at our defense and its components, good interior D-line, who might just make some plays on these inferior O-line, even when you're outnumbered in the box, they might just make a play anyway, and it's a 0-yard run, even though the box count said run it up the A-gap, right? We got guys who can man up outside. Mm-hmm. We've got at least one safety we're pretty confident in, and we might have two. We'll see. We'll see what the spring game shows us. And then we got linebackers who can freaking run, Ian. So veer and shoot will exploit your 250-pound run stuffer, but suddenly your 215-pound speedy guy, he's got a new life in facing the veer and shoot. Like, I think we're well disposed to handle them from a personnel standpoint. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. That sometimes they'll just get into spread sets so wonky that can become a trap. Like you'll be like, well, we'll just have our linebacker cover the ground, and then the ground that your linebacker has to cover is too great, even if he's, super fast. Like, do you remember Arthur Brown at Kansas State?
Of course.
They tried to do that with him against Baylor and got destroyed. And it was like, why is Arthur Brown? This also happened to Jalen Ford against Dylan Gabriel when Oklahoma ran the veer and shoot under Jeff Levy in the 2023.
Paralyzed him.
PK and his zone. PK being very zone heavy was a really bad match for the veer and shoot.
Well, and the real tweak in that game was committing to running Dylan Gabriel, right? Because it just made everything we were trying to do the wrong answer. And we really got outcoached in that game pretty badly.
Yes, both sides. That was tough. It was tough. So I don't know that we've seen a team do the deal yet where you turn the veer and shoot into a way to quarterback power teams into dust. I think that there's no reason to think that wouldn't work, except that your quarterback has to be able to maintain the ability to throw the catchable deep ball. Some of these guys probably can.
It's the Sam Ehlinger proviso.
Yes.
Every September, everyone's like, Sam's throwing the ball well. Wow, LSU, 2019 LSU, he's lighting them up. Man, he's throwing a good ball. By November, he's barely ever to get his arm over his shoulder because he has a million minor sprains, dings, cuts, tendon pulls. Like, there is a cost to be paid from running your quarterback a lot on power. So I think they're going to be judicious in that regard. But hey, man, if you're Mississippi State, you got Ole Miss in the Egg Bowl at the end of the season, I'm running Kamario Taylor 24 times.
Yeah.
Who cares?
So eventually somebody's going to be up for it. And Texas is going to be on the wrong date on this calendar where the other team is willing to do it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And we're going to have two of those veer and shoot teams on the schedule. That's Mississippi State and Tennessee, of course. Let me ask you this, though, Ian. I do think some of the success of the veer and shoot is its novelty.
Yeah.
If it's proliferating in the SEC, what we know about defensive coordinators is all it takes is one defensive coordinator to get the right game plan, and then everyone else copies it, right? They fast follow. If you have the personnel. Are we just going to end up with the veer and shoot getting solved because we see it all the time? Or is its uniqueness and its personnel uniqueness going to allow it to be a viable offense for quite a while?
I think it's going to be viable for a while because the nature of it is that even if you have the right game plan, the spacing is so extreme that if you make a mistake, they can punish it with quick scores. Like, I remember one time Bob Stoops had Bryles dead to rights, had them basically shut down and playing just man coverage and then loading up the box with athletes that Baylor couldn't block because they had exactly the kind of lineman you described earlier. And Baylor just kept going fast, getting more possessions. And then eventually they started running rub routes outside that made Stoops furious. And they caught Oklahoma in a couple busts, got a guy running free. And it went from being like Oklahoma was in position to win like 13-3 in a defensive struggle up to like 2 minutes before the half. And then all of a sudden it was like 21-13 Baylor going into the half and getting the ball back.
Yeah.
And it was over. So
Well,
that nature of it, I think, will always give it some permanency.
I agree with you because it's inherently agnostic. And what I mean by that
Yes.
is if you run it correctly and you don't get impatient, whatever the defense does, there's box count. And there's an inevitability of just the play. So Tennessee has led the SEC in passing yards, and Tennessee has led the SEC in rushing yards in different years. If you run an offense that can do that, that's an inherently ambidextrous approach to football that I think even as people scheme you up, I think it gives you some outs, right? So anyway, that's our thoughts on the veer and shoot. I want to talk about someone who's both innovative but also tried and true, and that's Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. That's 832-557-1095. You got to go with this guy. He's awesome at what he does. All of our watchers and listeners, for those of you listening on your pod, they rave about this guy. We've got nothing but 5-star reviews, great feedback, and these are people who now have created lifelong relationships. You usually want to create lifelong relationships with friends, family. You didn't know you needed to do it with your mortgage guy, but the fact is, people move, people refinance, and having a guy in your corner who absolutely nails it is invaluable. He's incredibly smart. He's a former National Merit Scholar. He's got a law degree from like a top 20 law school. He shouldn't be doing mortgages. He should be doing like splitting the atom somewhere. But he decided to do mortgages because he loves it and he's really good at it. So take advantage of it. Call him, 832-557-1095. All right, switching gears. You want to talk about some of these blitz happy or pressure happy defenses and what we can do about it?
Yeah. You have not yet revealed what we can do about it. I have.
It's coming.
I know. I have my own ideas. I imagine they mostly line up. But do you want to give just a brief overview of this? Is very similar to how I've been pointing out that Texas has a large number of spread teams with dual threat quarterbacks on the schedule.
Yes.
You have pointed out. What's that?
I said the whole SEC is dual threat quarterbacks now.
Yeah, okay, there you go. And certainly the ones that are on Texas's schedule.
Yep.
You've also pointed out that many of the defenses on Texas' schedule have a consistent trait, which is they
Pressure.
Pressure.
So let's talk about that because there's different types of pressure that you can bring to bear as a defensive coordinator, and there's actually different solves for each. The solves are not universal unless you're talking about some universal things like improving your O-line or Arch Manning coming into his own or the receivers catching the ball. But let's talk about it. We are going to be facing – so here's the premise. Last year, we really struggled, particularly on the road, with pressure defenses. And even defenses that by their nature are bend but don't break suddenly became pressure defenses when they played Texas because they watch film and football's dynamic. So Kentucky, classic bend but don't break philosophy. Against us, they're bringing it, right? And to great success. They held us to a season low of yardage. We scored 16 points, all created by punt returns, frankly. They dominated us. And Florida had no ability to get to the passer until they played Texas, and then it solved all their woes, and they're running crazy, TE stunts and all sorts of stuff, exploiting our guard issues. Arch Manning got murdered in that game, and so on and so on. But then, interestingly, we did have some solves for OU's pressure to a limited extent, and we had some solves for A&M's pressure in the second half. Both games, though, I would point out, characterized by it took some time for us to find those solutions. And if our defense hadn't played well, it wouldn't have mattered. In other words, our defense holding them down allowed us to get to the right solution. So we're going to play OU, who we know is going to bring it. LSU, who brings it even more than OU. I mean, they're more of an even classic blitzing team than Venables. One thing about Venables, he'll drop 8. Like, he does a lot of different stuff.
Yes.
There is A&M, who really holds their pressure for third down.
Mm-hmm.
And they have NFL quality blitz packages with their safeties and linebackers.
Yep.
And then Mizzou, who doesn't necessarily blitz a lot, or if they do blitz, it's to create a one-on-one matchup with their D-line. What they allow is their 4-man D-line to fire up the field every play. And they're trying to create.
I swear it's been like that for Missouri, like for 20 years.
It's been like that at Missouri for 20 years, and here's why, Ian. Because when you play a non-SEC schedule, even though you're in the SEC, a faux SEC schedule, and you're playing a lot of middling to poor offenses, one, that really works against bad offenses.
Yeah.
2, Missouri uses it they generate a bunch of stats and they sell recruits and transfers on it. They got Damon Wilson from Georgia saying, hey, dude, Kirby's making you like contain and you can't start your pass rush until you've done these 3 things. We're just telling you to fly up the field. We're going to get you a bunch of sacks, dude. Do you want that? And he's like, yeah. So let's start with Missouri since we talked about that. They lost 4 starting defensive linemen. 3 of them were very high quality. 2 to the NFL. 1, Damon Wilson, is now Miami Hurricane. He's going to do the Ruben Bain job. I think they're taking a big step back here, and I think they're the most exploitable in terms of game plan. We kind of want them to fire up field like that recklessly because we've got running backs now, and I think maybe an offensive line that can jiu-jitsu those guys and create some big plays. What do you think?
Isn't that basically what our solution was against Oklahoma and A&M last year?
Yes, but they were different solutions, and we'll cover that when we get to each of those respective teams.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the nature of the Texas's run game is kind of good in general for punishing blitzing teams, both in the zone nature of it, because zone blocking, you're just naturally teaching kind of judo techniques with some styles of zone, and they just happen to be the ones that we employ. And then also, I actually do think that the wide depth of Sark's run game playbook also helps, because when teams are just like trying to blitz or attack your run game and then they guess wrong and you're not running duo, you're running pin and pull around the edge and they have no one there, then all of a sudden you burn them really bad. Like Texas burned teams a couple times. They burned A&M really badly a couple times on that last year with running backs that, as we've discussed ad nauseum, were much less explosive than the guys that they're going to be using this year.
Yeah, so I think Missouri is the most straightforward solution. Now, that is a game at Columbia. It's the week before LSU. I'm predicting now that we're going to try to show the least possible on offense. I think we might sleepwalk a little bit in that game. I still think we'll win. But when all of you are freaking out by the fact that we only beat Missouri by 10 on the road, and you think it's going to like presage how we do against LSU, I would chalk that up to the game and to the schedule. But let's talk about A&M and OU, because we did a pretty good job in the second half against both teams. I'll remind everyone that against A&M, we had 3 points on the board at halftime and like 100 yards of offense, or less than 100 yards. So it took a little time to find it. But we defeated them in different ways. And here's how. OU, every year, we run outside zone, and every year it's successful.
Yeah.
Because Brent Venables loves to run replacement games. He loves to blitz. He loves to throw the kitchen sink at you. And he's moving guys pre and post snap on the D-line. We're catching them out of gaps, and we're punishing them. Guess what? We're going to run outside zone again as our base offense against OU this year. And unless Venables is calm enough to just have everyone hunker down, then we're going to have success. A&M was different because we actually ran inside. A&M does not play replacement games with their edges. Their edges fly up the field and try to make plays. What they do is play interior games with their D-line and with their mic. And they do these little, like, I'm sliding over right at the snap, and then your blocking scheme, we're confounding it. It's like a rundown stunt. and you're trying to get us an offense in second 11, because Elko is all about, I just want to get you in 3rd and 4 plus. Because once that happens, I can unleash my little NFL playbook of blitzes, and you're in trouble. They were the number 1 third down efficiency defense in college football last year. That's what they're about. But we caught them running on the inside, not outside zone. We caught them in those little games, and Wisner, to his credit, had the good patience and vision to pop through little gaps, and then he'd get caught from behind, right? He still had a big game. But that big game was created by our scheme and the O-line doing a good job of picking up that sliding defense on the inside.
Very Patterson-esque, actually, the
Yeah.
Elko approach to those downs. Patterson used to love to do that, like find the run stunt that stops your favorite run so he can get you in 3rd and 5. But then he didn't necessarily blitz teams to death like Elko does every year. I think prospects are good here for continued success in that same realm. A&M might be improved at some of these things in, what is this, year 3 now with Elko?
Yeah.
I think it's possible that their personnel is going to be level up again in executing their defense. It's hard to say because they lost a bunch of pieces, but a lot of the guys they lost, I don't feel like were like insanely talented, right?
I think they're beneficiaries of the system.
Yeah.
I think their biggest loss probably outside, because their corners were giving us some problems. And Torian York and Cassius Howell, for all the attention they get, they were the focus of our game plan. I mean,
those were like,
we targeted them.
Those were very TCU-esque players.
Yes. Undersized, quick interior linebacker.
Yeah.
And edge flying up the field who has good quickness.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he got matched against Trevor Gooseby and he got punked for 4 quarters. So that really shows you what a limited edge who just flies up the field. That's how they fare against like an NFL level offensive tackle. And that's what it looks like. But A&M wasn't playing a lot of NFL level offensive tackles. So Cassius Howell had a huge statistical season, to the degree that, A&M fans thought he was the equivalent of Colin Simmons, but no, he is not. So let's talk about the one factor that we don't know that we can handle yet, but we have some suspicions. LSU. I think if we played LSU's defense last year, they would have clowned us, because the kinds of things that they do and their ability to man up outside would have been a nightmare for that offense, that Texas offense last year.
Yeah.
I think that we're going to be able to have some success against them this year. Here's the deal with Blake Baker. He was retained by Lane Kiffin. I think the LSU defense was 12th in the country. Their offense was like 80th, which is insane. Lane's going to fix the offense, not just by scheme, but by personnel. Their defense, I think, is going to be as good or better than last year. And what they love to do is blitz, blitz, and blitz. And when Blake Baker does not get home with his blitz, his solution is to blitz harder from a different spot. So if you have an offense that's leaky on the O-line and you're not very good at explosives, as Texas was last year, that's not a good combo against that defensive profile. However, if you upgrade your offensive line, welcome Lawrence Seymour, welcome Siani out at right tackle. If you upgrade that O-line, particularly as a pass protection unit, and you've got a bunch of explosives all over your offense, like Cam Coleman, Hollywood Smothers, Raleek Brown, Wingo, maybe Jermaine Bishop, Townsend, suddenly that LSU defense can get exposed because they get a little reckless with their blitz. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a classic bit of Belichick wisdom here, which is that you blitz bad offensive lines and you drop and cover against good ones.
See Matt Patricia, right? That's what he might do to us.
And in college, if you're a good blitzing team, you're almost always facing a bad offensive line.
Yeah.
Whether or not they're bad relative on a college scale, they will be bad if they're facing you, a good blitzing team, until they're not. And then you can get into real trouble with that tendency, which is certainly could be the case for Baker. Also, when the quarterback is experienced and willing to be quick triggered, throwing the ball out to speed and space against the blitz, then that will really take you apart. And this is probably the first. Well, Arch did this well last year. This is one of the best quarterbacks I've seen at Texas for picking apart pressure with quick, good decisions into space.
Well, and Arch, one thing we noticed, particularly later in the year, he's really good on his third read.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the more reads he does, the better the play result. Early in the year, some of those quick trigger throws, he was not so great. Like, well, the crossing routes, some of the little sits, like, you know, run 5 yards, turn around. He would like sail it and hit a cheerleader. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he's going to address that. I think that's like an adrenaline thing.
I think so. I think also there was a weird difference between designed throws where it's like you're throwing this in an actual quick read. Like when we saw him make quick first read throws against pressure, especially in the second half of the season, where it wasn't a designed, you're always throwing it to this guy. It was an actual response to what he was seeing. He was pretty good. He didn't have the same problems.
Well, and it marries to our personnel improvements because a lot of those single read throw it is screen or go. So Wingo, you're running out laterally, and I'm gonna fake and then do this thing where I throw it. And if you hit a guy like Wingo perfectly upfield, shoulder, right in his hands, man, he's dangerous. Similarly, when you fake that, and then Cam Coleman's on a streak, I mean, our guy for that last year was DeAndre Moore.
Yeah.
Now it's Cam Coleman. No discredit to DeAndre Moore. He's a good dude, good Longhorn. It's a little bit of a gap in ability level.
Coleman also affords you the ultimate answer for this stuff. If you're willing to do it. That Indiana did last year, in which, do you remember, this drove me insane with Todd Orlando. Todd Orlando would blitz all the time, and he had a few different coverages. But what killed me was that all of Todd Orlando's coverages usually relied on man coverage outside.
Yeah.
And so the other team, if they had a dude that they could just throw it up to and he would catch it, then every big third down, it was like, Orlando's going to bring the house because he's like got possum instincts.
Yeah.
Their quarterback is going to throw up a prayer to their best player, and then their best player is going to catch it, and we're going to lose. And that would happen over and over again. Texas could do that with Cam Coleman. If it's like, hey, if all their blitz packages involve man coverage on Cam Coleman, then every time you blitz, I'm just going to throw back shoulder fade or whatever in the general direction of Cam Coleman, and then let's see how long you can survive against that.
Well, the other part of Orlando that really drove me crazy because he would double down on it as his defenses struggled even more and more was the choreography of the safeties. Meaning, there's a ton of value in any level of football. If you got two safeties, you can park back there and they just kind of read stuff and just flow, like go do football player stuff. That's very valuable to a defense. It's valuable in the NFL. It's valuable in college. It's valuable on my flag football team, right?
That's basically your base defense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're choreographing where those guys go before the snap, remember Orlando would be like, we're going to start in single high, but you're going to sprint forward because I think they're throwing it to their slot, and you're going to sprint forward and intercept it as he runs a 12-yard dig. And it's like, they're not running a 12-yard dig. They're throwing a go route, and now your safety can't help. And our corner can't play the ball in the air because that was a characteristic of Texas football for 14 years. It was just very frustrating to watch, right?
In fairness, that's a characteristic of football.
It's a characteristic of football, at any level. The corners who can play the ball in the air are usually playing receiver.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So,
no, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
Well, I have a transition into one other type of blitz that I'm worried about.
Let's go.
Oh, you're ready? Okay. The other kind of blitz that really chewed up Texas for the last 2 or 3 years
Nickel?
was the modern kind of nickel blitz. Well, just in general, the simulated blitzes, when an opposing coordinator would know if I show them this, I'm going to get this protection,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to throw the blitz in that is dialed up to attack that protection.
Yep.
And I think that I thought that problem would be miles better last year because they no longer had a quarterback that was a one read and then panic. They had Arch Manning who could scramble and whatever. And he was way better than Ewers was against those blitzes, but the offensive line was obviously like considerably worse.
Well, the college solution to that, Ian, and this is, by the way, not a Texas specific issue. This is a problem throughout college football. We've got an O-line crisis right now in college football.
Yep.
This is where the athletic quarterback is the pencil eraser, and he can make you right. And what did we learn from examining? There is no duo that did more true deep dives in film and breaking down the breakdowns in our team and what we did well on offense. When we had one free rusher, could Arch Manning solve that?
Yeah.
97% of the time. Two free rushers, we're in trouble. I think that we now have an O-line and a scheme and supporting personnel that our mistakes on offense are going to be one free rusher. And I think we're counting on Arch Manning to solve that. And you could say, that's not style, that's not schematically sophisticated. That's unsatisfying. That's college football. Sometimes you need a quarterback to make a play.
You should have seen me and Connor the other day. I was outlining fronts, and he was like, well, what happens when they run counter to this? I don't like the Mike's leverage. And I was like, yeah, but Colin Simmons is over there.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not really good enough. You can't just – and I was like, no, believe me, it's good enough. Just Colin Simmons will make it work.
Yeah.
That's so much in college football.
Well, and I'll say this, big picture, Sark's offense, well, college offenses in general, but really Sark's offense robbed of explosives when he does get that defense, the gotcha call, kind of sucked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right? Am I wrong?
No.
So when we
they
say
needed
stuff,
explosives to be adequate.
Well, and so like when we are deprived of the gotcha by personnel, that's really frustrating. Not only for us, but for Sark. Because he's like, I've spent all game setting up this coverage, and this should be a 60-yard touchdown. Like, where the coordinator's signaling the touchdown as the ball's being snapped, right? Once you're deprived of that in Sark's offense, we're not very good. Like, we don't do any one thing that great. So that's something that I think we've just solved through personnel. So it's kind of like your Colin Simmons thing. Like, well, we're going to be really exposed on the weak side here. And you're like, Colin Simmons is there. He'll figure it out.
Right.
Well, when we block it right and LSU brings the house, Hollywood Smothers is going to make a thing happen that was not happening last year. Cam Coleman down the field will make a thing happen on a contested ball that was not happening last year. Ryan Wingo, who we think will level up, will catch a screen and, first of all, catch it, but secondly, go 70 with it because they jailhoused or they blitzed their corner, and now they're having a safety come over to make that tackle, and Wingo runs through them. Like, It's okay to have a personnel solution to some of your problems, because we get caught up in like, let's schematically make it perfect. Truth is, schematically, Sark has these kill shots built into his offense, and if your personnel can't deliver the kill shot, we're just not very good.
So you don't feel I think you agree then that Texas probably doesn't necessarily have answers to those problems on the whiteboard. Maybe they will, but we're not counting on that. We're just counting on, look, the team is meaningfully better at every position group.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be okay.
So it's not or, it's and. Against OU, we're going to run outside zone.
Right.
And that's the schematic solution. But we're going to be running it with better players. Against A&M, we are going to attack that interior if they decide to do little line games, right? We were not effective against A&M on third down in Austin. We went 5 of 13.
Yeah, their blitzes destroyed Texas.
They killed us. And when you see it in person in the stadium, you're like, that's pretty slick. Like Dalton Brooks timed that up perfect. Like that's impressive.
I love that blitz.
Yeah. And dude, we can't stop it. College
No one
defenses can't stop it. So
I
stay out of 3rd and 12. How about that?
I didn't see anyone stop it all year. It was like, it's hilarious.
Yeah. So I don't want the takeaway for the chat to be, well, Ian and Paul just think we're better. No. We have schematic solutions to A&M and OU last year. Tip your cap, right? We beat them schematically. However, beating them schematically and having personnel that instead of a 31-yard run where your guy gets caught behind because he's running through green space, maybe that's now a 71-yard run and it's a score and we're firing the cannon. So the interesting thing, I think, will be facing LSU, Missouri, and then any other defense that wants to throw a loop at us. So the new DC for Florida, who we play again, is Brad White, who was the DC at Kentucky.
Mm.
So he's going to test our own line and be like, hey, have they fixed this? And if we fixed it, Florida's going to be in a lot of trouble. If we haven't fixed it, Arch, win the game.
Also, there's some other two. Pete Golding will do this when we play Ole Miss. He's more of the he's maybe a little more like Elko, I would say.
Golding?
Yeah.
I think he's a Costco Elko schematically. I think Golding's kind of a fraud. I'm not a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah, but if you can't pick up slants and stunts, then he will give you fits.
Very true. And you saw Ole Miss have success with that against Miami initially. Mm-hmm. Miami wasn't able to do that. Once Miami dialed in, Ole Miss was cooked, right? Especially late in that game. They were not going to stop them on that late drive. It wasn't going to happen. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a fun season. And I think the diversity of offenses that we're going to start getting in college football because of the portal, because of NIL, because you're trying to solve your budgetary crisis by playing football in a different way, I think it's going to be good for college football. Because we're all down on a lot of the stuff in college football that's happening right now. But I think that the player acquisition piece is going to force more creative and more interesting approaches on both offense and defense.
I thought you just said the opposite. That everybody just runs the cookie cutter veer and shoot and then turns everyone into cogs.
Well, the point is the veer and shoot's very valuable because you're recruiting off an alternate group of players.
Yeah.
So if you're an offensive coordinator and you explain to me that your pro-style offense, I'm Mike Shula. My pro-style offense requires exactly the players that Texas, Georgia, and USC requires to succeed. You just told me that you're going to fail because you're not going to get those players.
Yeah.
But if you tell me we don't even recruit against Texas for players, we run the veer and shoot, we're living in an alternate reality of player acquisition. I think you got a shot. I'm not saying you're going to win the Natty, but you can go 9-3.
Yeah. We're also seeing the other fun side of that with Vanderbilt running almost like a Osborne, Nebraska type program down there.
This season will be very telling for Vanderbilt. How much of this is Diego Pavia?
Yeah, I think we both think that this might not go so well.
Okay, but what if we're wrong?
Then right.
I mean,
I'll have to write some Substack pieces about it. It'll be very interesting.
Freaking Kurt Signetti South over there at Clark Lee, right?
Yep.
Not that extent, but I mean, dude, if Vanderbilt goes 9-3 with a true freshman quarterback, no Pavia, bad defense, something's up. Something's up more than just Diego Pavia's magical on the football field. So, yeah, I mean, this is what's so exciting about the SEC, so exciting about the college football season, is Texas is going to have a lot of interesting puzzles thrown at them throughout the year. And I can tell you, Texas ain't going to be a fun scout for a lot of teams when we were 2 weeks away and they got their pre-scout guys on us. If we come together the way I think we can, I think there's going to be a lot of guys throwing up their hands being like, I'm not quite sure how to approach this team other than maybe play too high and hope their run game doesn't hurt us. I don't know.
That's what I would do.
That's what I would do. But what if we run for 280? I mean, like, what if we're good at it?
Yeah. We'll see.
Let's hope.
We're better at it than we'll be in basketball tonight.
That's right. All right, we are going to put a bow on this. Ian, I'm going to give you the final word on the transition of the SEC to the veer and shoot and these blitzing pressure defenses we're going to see. What are your final encapsulating thoughts? And we'll wish everyone a good day.
Well, that's the name of the game this year, is stopping those dual threat quarterbacks in these ultra spread systems. And we're going to find out real quick if the offensive line and Arch Manning can take advantage of all the speed Sark has assembled on offense, because teams are going to, at least some teams are going to start by attacking and then seeing if we can counterpunch or not. And if we counterpunch as hard as we think we might be able to, a little good old Poetan left hook, then this season's going to get really fun.
Amen. Fingers crossed for a big season. We can't wait for these guys to get back from spring break and to hear some more great practice reports. And you can read about those at Inside Texas. You may think Ian and I are the final word on scoops and info, and I understand how you might think that. But Inside Texas is the place you got to be. 50% off spring sale, ultimate fan bundle. Let's go. That's where Ian and I write, and we are able to flesh out a lot of this stuff and write our articles and even include diagrams and clips and all sorts of fun stuff. Come find us there and keep joining us here. We want your subscription here. We want your comments. We want your likes. Help us in the algorithm and tell a friend. Until then, hook 'em.